You are now listening to Sophisticulture, a podcast by OBSCURAE Productions. If you enjoy this episode, please consider buying us a coffee. Your support helps us continue bringing you our coverage and episodes, including the podcast, our articles, and our TikToks. The link is in the podcast description. Thanks in advance. I am recording this missive from the Varda Bar at the TIFF Lightbox, which I can only describe as equivalent to the BFI South Bank back in London. I'm overlooking King Street. I have a perfect view of the Needle, the Toronto Tower, and the Canadian flag, and the King Street West and John Street Junction. I'm overlooking a really gorgeous, popular Saturday night, and I've just finished watching Pedro Páramo, which is the Rodrigo Prieto film. He is the cinematographer for all of your favorite, hugest, most artistic projects on planet Earth. And it was a fantastic story, much like a lot of magical realist literature from South America. I find it very hard to follow all the characters and the different people involved, and this film was no exception. But I'm thinking on it because I think this is my last film of the festival now. I leave Monday. Today is Saturday. I don't have any films scheduled for Sunday. That was kind of my little rest before a day of travel. There are films going, and I left it open in case I needed that day to fill my card with any other films. But I think Emilia Perez is going to be too difficult to get into. Anora is not getting any more screenings. And all the rest of the films I've been told are really great, are likely to really scare me. And so I will be waiting until I can see them on a very tiny screen, or maybe even not at all. If anybody would like to become the horror correspondent for OBSCURAE, we would really appreciate that work. At the publication. I've met a cast of amazing, colorful characters who you will be listening to in this podcast. But it has been a fantastic experience. A lot of the films that I saw are the kinds of films... No one said enough. Are the kinds of films that people are going to really enjoy and that have a lot of amazing rewatch value. And I think some of the films, the names of which I will be keeping strictly for my Patreon audience, were huge letdowns, which was a real shame because some of them I was really, really looking forward to, and they were not the film I expected them to be, not of the quality I expected them to be, or not of the quality I expected them to be. I wasn't really surprised by any of the good ones. I always thought that they were going to be good, and they were good, and some of them exceeded my expectations in being good. But a lot of the films that I thought I was going to enjoy, I did enjoy, and then a lot of the films I thought I was going to enjoy, some of the films I thought I was going to enjoy, and I really didn't. I think it's too early to tell what my absolute favorites were, but the three that keep recurring for me is Men of War, Meet the Barbarians, and... what was the third one? Saturday Night. And I think also The Life of Chuck. I think The Life of Chuck is a late one I'm going to add to the board, and The Luckiest Man in America. All fantastic films. I look forward to recapping this proper in a way that's kind of more of a long-form video for the main OBSCURAE YouTube and for our TikTok. But that is all I really want to say from my end. I want to hand the mic over now to all the interviews I've picked up in the intervening 11 days of TIFF, all of the different amazing opinions I've managed to gather on my travels, and you can hear from the ground what people are thinking. What I found out yesterday is that the People's Choice at TIFF is a good indicator for what's going to win the Oscar. And a lot of word on the ground has been that the Saturday Night film is going to end up winning the People's Choice, but we shall see. So yeah, I'll hand the broadcast over now to that cast of colourful TIFF characters. Toronto, you're beautiful. Your people are amazing. Your audience is unlike any other, and when people say that, they are not lying. You have an intelligent audience, but you also have an engaged audience that care about film in a way I have not ever witnessed, not even in Los Angeles, California. And so, thank you for having me. Thank you for being such a kind city to me these past 11 days of the festival. And I very much look forward to spending a lot more time here in my lifetime. Okay, here you go. On the ground at TIFF, the recap of the last 11 days. When we first discussed the system of Canadian film, which, by the way, I've been thinking of constantly since you mentioned it, because I've noticed that a lot of people are either first feature directors of Canadian origin and their Canadian films, or it's a co-production.
Yes.
I was like, that is, Zac said it. And so I wanted to ask you, because you were mentioning a solution of changing the current system as it exists, is a more regional based funding system into something that's more locale based. Is that what you're saying?
It's essentially because currently the most accessible funding system that we have at the moment are our ranks of councils,
Right.
federal, provincial, and municipal.
Right.
How, of course, federal is something open to all, but therefore being open to all means that it'll be the least accessible.
Yes.
I believe actually this last round there was I think between 12 and 16% success rate in getting a grant. You go to provincial, and there's more. And each province, I'm not entirely sure of the territories, but I do know each province has their own arts council. Though of course you can apply for a pretty, large sum cut of the amount of funds that you can to the federal council. Simultaneously, there's a lot of restrictions on, at least I know, on Ontario's council. You will have to have made work outside of the context of being a student. They will not accept student work, in fact, as portfolio, which, of course, due to the mere just lack of general resources, is a pretty large inhibitor insofar as like the academic institutions that prepare for film, not so much undergrad but masters in this country, are actually mostly funded programs, a funded masters. So they provide perhaps the most equitable place through which you can create work. And so to then not have that work be eligible in your your own filmography at all, especially if it's the last thing you made, it creates a kind of conundrum as to how you're supposed to be eligible. Because I myself have had council grants denied specifically because my portfolio wasn't up to the standards they anticipated. At the same time, I'm not allowed to submit works that are
of that standard, which were funded by these institutions.
Yes.
Gosh, that is such a catch-22.
It's a very it's very mundane Kafka. But and then there's the municipal structure, which is wonderful because it's also the least utilized resource. So you have more likelihood, but simultaneously there's far less money. But also, it's only certain municipalities that have their own councils,
right,
which makes like certain regional access, especially outside of major cities, difficult, and essentially again it's just a larger issue of equity throughout the country. And so ultimately my idea was just, well, what if we were to get rid of the councils as a whole? And instead of thinking of funding on a federal, provincial, municipal level, thinking like you said, locality, but like that locality being like incredibly small, so that it really is servicing the local community. Like you have co-ops in different regions of cities across the country that have, and I can imagine this for really every artistic medium, every place, essentially cultural hubs that specific area codes go to, as to commune with the people around them who are also interested in making, talking, and engaging with the art of their choice. And through these spaces, all the money that is collectively put into these councils is distributed across the country. Now, naturally, that will create far more of a difficulty on the maximum amount of money that each space gets. But simultaneously, for me, that kind of promises a new vision of what it is to create in this country.
And these locality-based co-ops, you said, would have the resources there for people to use, and that they would recoup that kind of kit fee with anything that the film...
The best example of that we have in Canada that I know of at the moment is the Winnipeg Film Group.
Oh, wow.
They are a local co-op that has studio space, even lift here, studio space. There are post-production facilities, color suites. There's even, optical printers for people who want to work on celluloid. And they have a giant equipment room from which many people rent out. And so I imagine if money is going through those bodies to be then distributed to the local population to make work, and then lots of that money then goes back to the very institution specifically as essentially capital, because it's for rentals. So that money is not going back to the government, that is staying in these co-ops. And so ultimately for me, I'm like, you're just making a collection of local economies. Which simultaneously I think can be furthered and also address the main issue in Canadian filmmaking, which is distribution and exhibition.
Go on.
I mean, distribution and exhibition is, for me, in what I have studied, the main reason why we do not have an industry that is able to sustain careers within cinema.
Is this again the thing of one screen showing one Canadian film off in the corner?
This is a matter of quotas based on government policy that many countries put into place post World War II because of American cultural colonialism. And English Canada, it used to be that Canada was pretty much the only country not to defend themselves on a policy level until Quebec said, we're not going to keep this up. And within that kind of separatist ideology that exists there, they simultaneously isolated their own industry.
And that's the French-speaking part of Canada.
Yes. And so they have very accessible tax credits that do not have, the tax credit in Ontario, you basically have to have a minimum budget of $1 million to even begin accessing
so that's not for you guys.
It's completely unrealistic on every sense of, on every level. Whereas in Quebec, I know for a fact that you can grab those tax that tax money specifically on budgets that I believe are around maybe a quarter of $250,000, perhaps even up to maybe even it goes down to $150,000. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know it's absolutely not to the gargantuan expectation, especially in the consideration that the most of money you get from the major feature film body in this country, the most you will get from their programs are $500,000.
Right.
And so, which means that
you're also a partial budget.
Exactly. It has to be. It's ultimately a maximum of 500,000 or 49% of your budget, whichever is less. And so this idea is ultimately, okay, this federal system is clearly not working. So exactly, and because there's nowhere to watch these movies, but if we had these co-op, and these co-op spaces that exist are spaces that people gather constantly to watch local work. And so if there was actually a genuine attempt to even think about creating just, if it could be popular fiction, it could be just I know. So I have at my festival screened very, populist comedies that were shot for no money that people adored. And I'm sure if that could be a kind of language and form of that kind of populist sensibility in itself, it at least creates something and establishes something that is also unique. Because if there's anything Canada is, it's a lie of this idea of an identity, and ultimately that lie has kind of enmeshed with these aspirations for American quality content, the Hollywood North, as it's often called. But that is ultimately not realistic, and the continuing lie that sees filmmakers in this country either leave or simply like leave the country, leave the industry, or transition to television because they don't really have any other feasible capacity to practice their art while making a living. And so ultimately it's just for me a matter of, with a giant structural reconstruction, it is simultaneously perhaps one in which we reimagine the type of works that can be made anywhere.
And that could also build, if I'm understanding you correctly, it could start to build a Canadian filmic sensibility locally, like, because there'll be separate ways that kind of populist
Because
filmmaking will manifest.
and that precedent has already been set. I mean, there's a reason why Winnipegian filmmaking is something that people across this country know.
Okay.
Right? Like there's a reason why that kind of sensibility is one that was also very lo-fi, very pastiche ridden, but in ways that were also incredibly achievable, and sort of created a landmark of aesthetic that is now kind of something that is sought after, that is now created contemporaneously and has become its own pastiche, which you obviously then you get a cultural continuity with that. Whereas, but most of the time that's not the case, most especially in, you know, the major hubs of Toronto and Vancouver. That just doesn't really exist. So ultimately it's just like, what the question that I ask as I think about these like local economies is just, how can we continue to do this? Because that is a question that we need to think of right now in this country, as on the horizon is a conservative government that is threatening to axe the public. Imagine if in the UK they were just like, we're going to get rid of the BBC. That is what is being
it's coming. We're starting
threatened
with
here.
with the TV license. We're trying to get rid of the TV license, which funds the BBC. So it is actually also happening.
Okay,
Listen,
so
rise of fascism.
yeah. so this is on the horizon, and if the CBC is able to be touched, there's no doubt that the councils as well. Like, I mean, there's already been panics over the last half a decade surrounding the sort of plateau that the Canada Council and the Ontario Council has gotten in terms of the funding capacity. Simultaneously, the Ford government in Ontario has consistently threatened the capacity of the Ontario Council, to which many art institutions have had to fight back. But over the last 5 years, the amount of festivals, publications, they've collapsed. There is simply just no longer a running well on the public circuit, because there's too much infrastructure entrusted to private equity, which is now pulled out. And
God, this is sounding very familiar.
So with that familiarity, it's just like, you know, all these cycles have been on repeat because they're all simply responding to an economic shift. So for me, the only answer is to recreate the way in which we can imagine and also utilize an economy. And for me, at this point, it seems that we need to start local, because otherwise it would just become unsustainable. There's no sense that there can be no horizontal organization if immediately you're just trying to govern an entire infrastructure. As an experiment, the experiment needs to start small. It needs to be willful, and we're certainly not going to get any government backing behind it. So of course this is a very idealistic idea, but also one that can be thought of as an ideal and thought of as a structure to build towards from nothing, and that would just take multiple people.
The reason I asked is, at the time I was saying you were explaining all of these structural problems. It was sounding very familiar to me as a person trying to make short films and features in London, where we simultaneously you're sitting in the seat of, we're sitting in our version of Vancouver or Toronto, but funding is drying up, our institutions are being challenged, and I was hearing all of these similar kind of struggles. But I did ask for the pie in the sky answer, and this is an answer that works. And I think it's an answer that could even be applied back in the UK.
I think because ultimately you've had underground experimental filmmaking for decades being orchestrated on local economies.
Yeah.
It's all been through small independent bodies that many people within the cities would go to, and through that you found waves, literal artistic waves, creative waves that's influence has now absolutely emanated through the decades.
Yeah.
And so like it's not like this is just plucking an idea out of thin air. There is historical precedence. On a scale of fiction, there isn't, but who's to say that with a little bit of imagination and reconsidering what it is to create and conceive of fiction in the cinema, that can't get there.
Zac, you're a legend. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Go for it. Can I get your name really quickly?
Roy McMullen.
Nice to meet you, Roy. So, films you want to see at TIFF?
I want to see Honora.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I don't know much about it except that I know that it's the same people that did the Florida project.
I love the Florida.
Yeah, me too. That was
My
just
goodness.
an amazing movie. What's the other one I wanted to see? Disclaimer.
Disclaimer, Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah, that looks really good. What else did I hear about there? I think that's all I got for you.
I have to say, it's interesting because those are two films. So, Honora, apparently Sean Baker, the guy that made the Florida project, wrote it specifically for the main actress in it.
Oh.
Which I think is fascinating to me because I see him as such a filmmaker that's like so rough and ready with the Florida project. The last scene is on an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So he's just he just goes for it. And so
Wow.
I'm also very much looking forward to seeing it, but unfortunately at TIFF I won't be able to. It's just been packed.
Yeah,
Everyone
for
knows
sure.
about it, right? Disclaimer, I don't know too much about other than Alfonso Cuarón made it. What drew you to Disclaimer?
I just saw an ad for it, and I'm trying to think of who's in that. Do you know who's in that?
Honestly, I cannot remember. I think Julianne Moore, maybe? Someone.
Not Nicole Kidman.
No, that's Baby Girl. I'm seeing that later.
What's that called?
Baby Girl. It's the new Nicole Kidman film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll let you know if it's any good.
Yeah, let me know.
You know the one I loved this morning? Saturday Night.
Oh.
The one about Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yes.
It's fantastic.
Is that the Will Ferrell one?
That is a different one. This one is the one where they've cast all these young actors as Dan Aykroyd and everything, and it's the 90 minutes leading up to the first episode
okay.
of Saturday Night Live. It is hectic. It's good though.
Really?
It's really, really good, and I think they shot it on film, so it's got 1970s feel to it too. Really good.
Now, the Will Ferrell movie, is that a documentary?
It is.
It is a
Will and Harper.
documentary.
Yeah, him and his
okay.
friend who was transitioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're traveling across the country or
I think
something.
so.
I mean, it should be funny, right?
Right?
You
For
know?
sure, right? And I think Harper used to write for SNL.
That's right,
So
yeah.
that's what,
I think they both started at the same time there. Yeah.
I have to catch it. Again, it's not one I'm going to be able to make for this festival.
Yeah.
Roy, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Well,
and now
thank you very
I
much.
hope you get to Honora, and I really hope you get
Yeah.
the disclaimer, and you can tell me about it.
I will. Thank you very much.
All right, what kind of opinion? You want a hot take?
Go for it.
Okay, Red Rocket, best film of all time, directed by Sean Baker.
Nice. What's your name?
Michael.
Michael. Have you seen Honora yet?
Yes,
How was it?
it's amazing.
Really?
I love all of Sean Baker's work. Takeout's amazing. Florida Project, Starlit, Prince of Broadway, Four-Letter Words, Tangerine. That's all. Even his shorts, amazing.
I have to get way more into him than I already am, for real. What did you like specifically about his style?
When I saw Red Rocket, I went into it because I have to drive 2 hours to go to a big theater to watch films. I was going up to see Licorice Pizza. I saw a description for a film, said a porn star going back to his hometown. I said, that sounds funny. I watched it, and I completely changed afterwards. It is hilarious, while also emotional. It has some of the best editing, and Sean Baker does his own editing. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, check it out, 100%. Nice to meet you also.
Let's go.
Okay, this is amazing. With a Zoom H1N, perfect.
Indeed.
Okay,
What's your name?
I'm David.
David. Strong film opinion. Go for it.
Annie?
Yeah.
Carte Blanche?
Any and what you've just seen. Anything. Literally
Ooh, okay. I just came out of David Cronenberg's The Shrouds.
Okay,
I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought the Cannes reception was a little bit unfair to this film. It was kind of panned. A lot of friends said that it's Cronenberg's worst film, and I disagree. I thought it was very funny. Really handled the subject matter on grief in a way that was very frank and vulnerable, but also, again, very humorous. So, yeah, I thought The Shrouds was actually good and one of my favorites of the festival. But one controversial take that I have is I think the best film of the festival is Joshua Oppenheimer's The End.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of people panned it, and I actually came out of it with a really great sense that I saw something new. And yes, it's ambitious, and sometimes it's a little bit long, and it drags a little.
That's the musical, right?
But yeah, it happens, you know. But I feel as though the juxtaposition, the contrast of the musical with The End of the World, and then I could go into like so much more detail about the iconography that Oppenheimer is trying to infuse, kind of playing with the idea of storytelling as a form of consoling with a great lie, especially with the main character, George McKay's character, being kind of duped his whole life, his whole kind of like vision of his family lineage and the catastrophe that they cause. It's something that's very complex and really works in this almost operatic manner that I thought was very profound and earned its like emotional pathos at the end. The songs are great. George McKay gives a perfect performance. I think he's one of the best actors of our generation.
I have to see more of his work.
Yeah, The Beast is his best performance. Bertrand Bonello, a really, really great film that I saw here last year. So he's 2 for 2 for favorite movies of TIFF. The Beast last year, now this year.
Have you seen Saturday Night yet?
Yes, I have.
What did you think of it?
So I thought it was
That also
alright.
kind of canned, but I liked it.
It was fine. Like, I enjoyed my time watching it, and I've seen way worse movies here at the fest. It's one of those things where I feel like the script felt a little bit too fan servicey for its own good, as in it's trying to pander to like a a history buff Saturday Night Live kind of audience.
Handed to me, very much so. I am one of those historical kind of SNL like heads, so it very much was pandering to me.
But what I will say though is that I thought the filmmaking was quite strong.
Wasn't it just?
So I have a few issues like with the usage of 16 millimeter, mainly because I feel like they use more refined camera lenses, and the whole entire point of using 16 is for it to look dirty and grimy, whereas it felt a bit too polished, the look, which is kind of like, okay, why are you shooting on 16 then? But outside of that, I actually really liked the score by John Baptiste.
Oh, was it brilliant? I loved
It was great.
He did a fantastic performance, I thought.
And what I found really interesting is that Reitman mentioned at the beginning of the screening from yesterday that Baptiste actually composed the score on set.
Wow.
After they finished shooting, he would like kind of work on some improvisational jazz.
And then I think they recorded it live, didn't they? They did a live
Exactly.
recording of the score, which I thought was just amazing. It really shows, doesn't it?
Definitely, and it adds to the high energy and kineticism of both the music with the accompanying visuals, the chaos. I thought it was a little bit tame. I thought there was going to be more chaos to it. So, like, again, for something that's being advertised as like complete pandemonium, I felt a little bit, not as exhilarating as I expected it to be. But hey, I love the lead actor, Gabriel Labelle.
He was brilliant.
He's amazing.
Just brilliant.
Cooper Hoffman's also really good.
Love him.
So yeah, that's my take.
That was David Cuevas from Filmhounds magazine, giving us his hot takes on his faves at the festival this year.
Faves of the festival, your name really quickly, Kevin.
Kevin, yes. My name is Kevin Dow.
You are a producer from Calgary, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
Fantastic.
I'm a producer from Calgary, and
Just
one
go
of
for it.
one of my faves from the festival, I'd say, is The End, the Joshua Oppenheimer movie. That's like a post-apocalyptic musical set in a bunker with Tilda Swinton, Michael Shannon, George McKay.
Everyone loves George McKay right now.
Yeah, he's versatile, and he can do like a little bit of everything. But yeah, this is like a really great film about the way our sort of like daily lives are maybe built upon the exploitation of others in some ways. I found it really powerful, and I sort of view it really, it fits within his greater filmography because he made like The Act of Killing, The Look of Silence.
I am not familiar with his work at all. Like even a little bit.
Well,
Makes me a bad cinephile.
no, that's okay. Those films, I'd really recommend seeing them if you're, like, be prepared to see them because they're about the Indonesian mass killings of 1966 and 67.
Ooh, light fare.
Yeah, light fare,
Sure.
and they're documentaries, but like the sort of concept of
Documentary. This is his first fiction film. right?
exactly the sort of concept behind the Act of Killing is like interviewing the perpetrators of this genocide who have not been held to task. So he's already diving into really deep, dark places, and so I feel like the end is like an extension of that. It sort of
And he
follows.
manages that with a musical.
Yeah.
How? Fascinating.
I think it's like really fascinating too. It's sort of like Brechtian, but in a way that's like advancing it
I'm too dumb to know
more.
what Brechtian is.
No, I know. I barely have a grasp on what it is either. But I think Brechtian like theater, it was in the like 20s, was like musicals that were ironically like made to sort of comment on society, and they were pretty like artificial in their staging.
Fun.
But this one's like taking that, but like using Hollywood musicals, and I don't know. I really dig it. It's like a little bit further than that. It's like moving past the irony of like Brechtian theater into like, I don't know, treating it pretty on the
It got
nose.
Sincere. It did a horseshoe
Sincere.
and came the other way.
Exactly. And I think that's an interesting way to do it for sure. Anyway, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. So
And you said Sharp Corners as well. Was a nice one that just like in the last 24 hours?
yeah, Sharp Corner was really great, and that was like exactly like a piercing look at masculinity, almost in the style of like Force Majeure. It's like you're watching this man sort of go through his crisis of masculinity. You're sympathetic. I mean, I as a man am sympathetic, but then also it pushes that sympathy very far until the point where it's like, oh, I'm no longer sympathetic.
What's the premise?
The premise of Sharp Corner is about a guy, a sort of nuclear family. So a man who's like works at, I think, an ad agency with his wife and his kid, moves into a sort of suburban house. And the house they move into has a really sharp corner in the road.
Oh,
And so the first night they move in, car crashes and somebody dies. And then the man sort of becomes more and more obsessed with trying to save the lives of the increasing number of car crashes that happen outside of his house. And it's a very darkly funny movie.
wow.
Starring Ben Foster, Kobe Smulders.
I love her.
Yeah, I'd recommend seeing it for sure.
Very fun.
Hopefully it'll come out in the rest of the world because
Yeah.
I think they're looking for distributors and things. But yeah.
I mean, it sounds like something I probably really do enjoy because my sharp corner is if it's like proper horror, can't do it. But if it's like psychological thriller, like if it's doing like mind games, I love that shit.
Totally. It's really squirmy. It's like a very psychological. I wouldn't say horror as much as like sort of like play of personalities and like
As a contrast
domestic
to that,
drama.
have you seen Baby Girl yet?
I have not.
It's like exactly the opposite. It's a 90s erotic thriller, but based in 2024, made by the same woman that directed Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Oh yeah.
Helena Rain, I think is her name.
Oh, amazing.
So uncomfortable to watch, but
Okay.
so good. Like
Does it-
because the conversation it's having is very matured. It's not just a regular story about an affair with power dynamics in it. It's having a conversation on top of that, which I thought was fascinating. Really difficult to watch, but really, really good.
Amazing.
A conversation kind of about women and the role of women within relationships and women's sexuality and stuff. So I know it's not the same as masculinity as a whole, but it is interesting. There's conversations now in both of those films, big films that have come to TIFF that are like having
Yeah.
those conversations. It's a trend.
Yeah, all three. I mean, I haven't seen Baby Girl. I assume it's similar in this way. All three of these films, maybe I have a thing with like the tenuous like sense of stability in like domestic life.
Yeah.
'Cause I think the end has it. Sharp Corner definitely has that too.
Yeah,
Because it's
Baby
like,
Girl.
yeah,
Like they're this perfect family, but it's getting broken by
Yeah.
the inner animal of this woman. And I think it's interesting that
yeah,
that was the same with Night Bitch,
yeah.
and it's like a running theme.
Maybe the maybe it reflects a fraying of our sense of society. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You're right.
I'm sure there's a reason for it, but maybe it's all the time.
I agree. It seems to be like a running thing of why do we care so much? Like late stage capitalism, why do we care so much about all these things we have? We're animals. We're just animals. Like there seems to be that coming back in a couple of films I've seen. So yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciated. And I will. How would you like me to credit you, by the way?
I mean, I'm a producer based in Calgary, in Canada.
What's your production company name?
Tall Hero Films.
Tall Hero Films, you guys.
Yes.
So we'll keep an eye out when that shows up in the beginning credits of a film at TIFF next year.
Absolutely.
We'll be like, oh, I know that guy.
Next year, 3 to 5 years from now, yeah, why not?
We'll
Maybe
know
15 years, we'll see.
Well, come on, give yourself some credit. Hey,
Yes.
thank you so much.
The Rebecca Hall
I
show.
did. I did also.
Didn't that kid look like George McKay? The one she was hanging out with, like the whole time, I was like, that looks like George McKay, and it's not.
I'm from the UK. All our boys look like that.
That is true, but he has the unique cheekbone. So
It's true.
I
hope you don't mind.
George McKay is having a moment.
Really, very much so. And the face of George McKay. I hope you don't mind. I started recording this
Oh.
already.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine.
Can I get your name?
Yeah, I'm Jedediah Cooper. You want me to spell Jedediah?
Go for it.
Jedediah.
Very cool. Jedediah Cooper, and you are a...
I am a filmmaker. I currently live in Tacoma, Washington, which is near Seattle.
Amazing. Awesome. TIFF, how has it been? Good, bad, ugly?
I think I
I
just...
have an ugly, but I'm keeping it to myself. Because otherwise everybody will flame me because it's like one of the big movies that's coming to TIFF and I can't say it.
Oh, no, same. I think we're talking about different movies, but same. I think I just love film festivals. I'm having the time of my life here. I'm treating this as a vacation. Seeing a lot of cool films. A lot of films that, you know, are coming out in a month, and a lot of films that
Haven't got a release date yet.
yeah, might not hear about again. I don't want to be negative. Hope that's not too negative, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. I want to ask you about the Wildrow box. I'm seeing that tomorrow at Press and Industries screening. And I am a very big Peter Nyong'o fan. I'm a very big animation fan. And I was kind of, is it weird? I haven't been to TIFF before. I was very surprised there was an animated feature of that scale coming to something like TIFF, where I expected like a baby girl.
Or I like the 2 weeks leading up to it, I swear every ad I got on Instagram was for the Wild Robot. And it was, yeah, no, I don't know if that's usual too, to have a film with a big, ad push before it even the world premiere at TIFF. Because like I haven't seen ads for any of the other movies. I mean, I've heard buzz, but not ads. Like it was like every ad on my phone. Every time I would swipe, it would be the Wild Robot.
Sorry? Press record again. We got interrupted by truffle popcorn.
Yes, it's good.
The free perks are part of the fun.
Of sitting here, yeah.
Was the Wild Robot like TIFF? Did you go to it and go, this is crazy, this is actually like a TIFF movie? Or did you watch it and go, did you work
There's like a whole range of answers I could give that. That was the first time I've ever been to a world premiere, so I was a little kind of overwhelmed by just being in that room, you know, and that's fantastic. I'm not versed enough in festival politics to to really weigh in on it.
Was it feeling more like a smaller story?
It was the movie didn't work well for me on all cylinders, but it was just like it was like I described it as sickeningly sweet. Like it was just so like trying to be so sweet and big hearted that it was like it landed kind of somewhere in cheesy for
Dynamics, it didn't feel.
for a good chunk of it. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was a cheesy child's film.
How about absolute best film you've seen so far?
It's Heretic, which has gotten a lot of buzz around, and Riff Raff, which is a Jennifer Coolidge, Ed Harris movie. It's a dark comedy about a family. Very funny. The cast is fantastic. You want me to rattle them off? Is Jennifer Coolidge, Ed Harris, Bill Murray, Pete Davidson. I think Bill Pullman's kid is in it. There's a guy who kind of looked like Bill Pullman with the last name Pullman, so I think his kid's in it. And there's two other people who I didn't know their name in it, and they were great as well. Like, it's a fantastic cast. Very funny, dark comedy.
I was going to say, what's the premise?
Give me a second here. It's about The setup is that Ed Harris, Gabrielle Union. I forgot Gabrielle Union. She's in that too. I do not want to forget her. It's Ed Harris is with a new wife and has a kid, or well, kind of adopted kid in a way. His old family, and his not that the old family. Everyone knew about the old family. It wasn't. That's not revealed to anyone. But old family and old problems come back to their vacation house over New Year's. Yeah, dark comedy. Yeah, you get it.
Well.
Very funny.
Love it.
Very funny.
Love it. Have you seen Saturday Night yet? That's the one I've been running around raving
I
about.
think I'm seeing that tomorrow. I'm very excited. I'm seeing Saturday Night, and then I think I'm going directly to The Substance. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for those two.
I hope I catch you at that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing with Saturday Night. It's polarized.
Bro.
On one hand, everyone's like this like negative emotions. Anyone that's like a real fan of SNL loves it. A full real-time 19-minute roller coaster. I loved it.
I'm looking forward to it, maybe even more now.
Amen. I love that. And The Substance also, that was such a big premiere at the beginning of the festival. That's
Yeah.
how I'm on tiptoes waiting to see what is going on there. Anything that you went in going, this is going to be absolutely fantastic, and then you were like, oh no. That was one for me.
Yeah, I forgot the filmmaker's name, but he's a prolific, I believe. I forgot what country. By the Stream. Do you know? Yeah. Do you want me to give me a second to pull up his name, or yeah? Yes, that's it. Yes, and I've seen a little bit of one of his other films, and I wasn't into it. And then watching that was by far I'm not into that. I'm into slow cinema, but not that slow.
I've been finding that some of the slow stuff has really hit, like Baby Girl, but most of it, I think because we're watching so many films in a day, slow is hitting less well for me.
I had a tough day yesterday. It was just like 3 duds in a row, and luckily I like The Shrouds, the Cronenberg film, because I would have gone home. I hit a rough patch yesterday.
And where can people follow you?
At Jedediah Cooper on Instagram.
And that doesn't have any dashes or underscores or anything. You managed to scope Jedediah.
Yeah, that's what happens when your name is Jedediah.
Well, you never know. That's very cool.
I'll unprivate my account for this.
Amazing. There you go. You've got a whole bunch of listen, we're not big yet, but we have loyalists.
Oh,
so they
yes.
will definitely come and check you out. And you're a filmmaker, and we look forward to seeing your name. It's not a difficult name to forget.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's why I chose it. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
Is that good? Yeah. I can move it up a bit. You can adjust it if you think you can do something there. You can even put where you are, actually. So, I don't know.
I don't know if the mic will,
these stupid wires, but that's our limit.
That looks good.
All right.
Amazing.
All right. Well, then we'll press record here. I'm doing it in HD. So, oh, no, wait. This is 720.
Yeah,
there we go. HD.
I read something vintage about 720 at this point. It's kind
I know.
It's kind of like 35 millimeter.
Yeah, she was saying 720 is vintage. So
Yes.
that's the thing. It would have that feel like grainy.
To be fair, I was going to mention, have you seen Daniela Forever yet?
Is that a movie?
It is.
I've not seen Daniela Forever.
So it's got Henry Golding in it, and it plays between 4K and 4:3 video, like early 2000s 4:3 type video footage, and that's meant to represent kind of different realities.
Oh.
Dreaming state and the waking state.
Interesting.
And I think it accomplishes that, but its ending was a little bit stilted in that it wasn't quite complete. Like there was I think it was aiming for ambiguous, and what it ended up doing was leaving everybody a little confused.
It is. By the way, I should introduce our interview.
Indeed.
Who are you?
I am UMNIA El Neil. I am currently representing OBSCURAE both as a publication and as a production company here at TIFF. And I'm running around with my mic for Sophisticulture, which is our podcast. And could I also get your name for us?
I am Spark the Genius, and my show is called Spark the Genius, and I will spark the genius within you.
Amazing.
And we just randomly, I saw you sitting near us at this cafe. What is this called? Verdana or something?
Varda, as in Agnes Varda.
Oh, there's a whole thing. And you have a sign saying strong film opinions wanted. And I'm like, I got opinions. So I said, what are you doing, a podcast? She's like, I'm doing a thing. You want to be interviewed? I'm like, great. So she's holding an audio microphone. You're an audio podcast.
We are
but I'm like, I'm filming this too. So I've got my little Rode mics, and we were just talking about technology and how I've decided to shoot in 1080p. So it's not too It's not as big as 4K, but it'll look good. And yeah, vintage, speaking of which, I work in advertising, I write commercials. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, that they were still shooting commercials in like the square shape of a TV. And I was like, you know what, I think HD's coming along. Like, could we shoot the wide lens? And they were like, oh, like everybody's getting mad at me at work. They're like, that's crazy. And editors are like, no, it's gonna cost more if we're gonna shoot. I'm like, why would it cost more to shoot? That didn't make any sense. Now I realize they were just ripping us off.
Right.
But I think I was the person that finally got Kellogg's and Visa to shoot their commercials in HD, and now it would be ridiculous to have a square video. Like, it doesn't make any. I'm like,
the public salutes you.
yeah, I was like, who's watching TV on an old, like, people have the one. No, nobody has wide screens. That's for rich people. I'm like, what are you? Anyways.
And now, honestly, now if you were to make an advertisement in 4:3 or in that square TV format, you'd set yourself apart.
It wouldn't. That's true. It would be a thing like what? Because I mean, yeah, they had the black bars. And then I think it was all like adding bars and then like, ridiculousness. That's
War of the aspect ratios.
Yes, but we're in the future now. And I was even just talking to these brothers here that we met, and he was like, it's so weird, like you can film on your phone now. I'm like, I remember like 15 years ago, or wasn't that long ago, that I got home. I was living in this building actually, and a homeless man had, I think he was hitting on me or something. He was saying, I like your muscles. And I was like, it was interesting discussion. And I was going to come home and type it like as a Facebook status. I'm like, wait a minute, I can shoot a video. I'm going to shoot what I call a video Facebook status. And there was no vlog back then. It wasn't a term. Yes. And I was like, hey, here's what just happened to me. I'm like, this is brilliant. Like, and if I had actually stuck with it, maybe I could have blown up. I could have been the next Mr. Beast or something. Yeah. But I don't know if I worked hard enough. But back then, I decided, like, I don't know, maybe it was like almost 20 years ago, I said, I'm going to try posting a video every day on YouTube as a comedian. And I was actually in the top 10, like, Canadian comedians for a bit, because I was the only one doing it, I guess. I was reading yesterday, and this can't be right, but I was looking up top subscribed YouTubers, and now, like, it's Mr. Beast with, like, 311 million or something. But, like, in 2006, somebody was the top YouTuber with, like, 2,000 subscribers or something. Like, what?
Wow.
I probably could have gotten that by going up to people in the street and be like, can you subscribe? So you're here from London.
Yes, I am indeed. I was going to ask you, because I think a lot of people have been sharing opinions with the podcast that have been very contradictory. The question I wanted to ask you, seeing as you have a familiarity with coming to TIFF, is you must have had some expectations of what films were going to be like coming in. What is the biggest delta, good or bad, between your expectation and what the reality of the film was? I know we're not at the end of the festival yet, but which film did you go, oh, that was much better, or that was much worse than I thought it was going to be?
Yes, well, the problem is I've only seen one movie, and it was 10 minutes ago. I like coming to TIFF. Like if I have a media pass, or in the past I've seen a few movies because I was writing the ads for Visa and they were sponsors, so they'd come to work and be, here's a pile of movies. I'm like, I don't know. I'd randomly go to them and discover cool things. And then, this year I just came, like, I'm just going to walk around. So I've been bumping into people I know, or just meeting people. And so I met some random woman. She was standing alone outside the red carpet. I said, oh, what are you doing here? She's like, oh, hey. And we'd start talking. And then she's like, here, I've got an extra ticket. So I just went in. So that's fun. And
what was the film?
It was called Hold Your Breath.
Oh my goodness, that's the horror film.
Yes,
yes. How was it?
It was really good.
I'm waiting for someone to tell me about it, because I can't watch it. I can't do horror.
It wasn't. I don't think it was so horrifying that you'd be like, oh, I can't watch it. It was more like tense and psychological horror. It all takes place in the 1930s, and like this dust belt, like it's just this little house that's dust and everywhere, and everybody's going crazy, and there's a guy that shows up and stuff. So it's
Ebon Mosbakrak, the guy from The Bear.
I haven't seen I guess, is he in the movie?
I think he is,
all right,
but I don't know if he's the guy.
Well, there's only like two guys in the movie. There's one guy that's a sheriff for 2 minutes, and then there's this vagrant that shows up. So that must be the guy. And it's good, because I'm always afraid at a film festival it's going to be like, oh, it's artsy movies. It's going to be two people discussing life in a restaurant in Paris or something. But then
My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah, but then when it's something exciting like this that's like gripping every minute, like an actual movie you would go to a theater, I'm like, oh, I'm so happy about that. And then I went up to the director's, a pregnant woman. I guess they're a couple, and the woman wrote it, and they were standing on the stage at the end. I went up like, hey, can I ask you, like, was that guy a kid? Like, I was trying to figure out like what, because it's like in the movie, it's like, is something real? Is it not? And they told me, oh yeah, this is what we intended, this and that. And I'm like, wow, I get to ask the director right now what they intended. And I want to ask something, but I don't want to take somebody else's spot. So so that's why I was glad that I could run up on my own and I hadn't bothered anybody. But yeah, that they always say that Toronto's got one of the best audiences, I guess, because it's highly educated. People appreciate films. It's not just, people just randomly going, like they really get into it. And that's why they all vote for the People's Choice, and then they have a free screening of that at the end of the week. And often it's a guide to what's going to win the Oscar. So
Really?
like a lot of times it's like if you're going to be on a betting thing, like that's the one that goes on to do it.
So good to know.
Yeah.
I feel that there was an advert that plays in the public screenings, I'm sure you noticed, where there is a play on the fact that Toronto as a city has a lot of film opinions.
Was it all like the cab drivers talking about, it was very,
Brechtian
I was going to say Brechtian, but that's not a movie. But yeah, David Cronenberg or whatever.
I loved that because that has been my experience. Everybody from the guy behind the bar to every volunteer has very sophisticated tastes in films, and that again is not something I've experienced before.
Yeah.
So when people say TIFF's and Toronto's audiences are special, it's not actually a lie. Every single screening I've gone to, even the smallest stuff, has got tons of people there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I went a couple of years ago to something called The Swimmers or something. It was about like, who were they? Were they Iraqi or Syrian refugees twin sisters that had to swim across an ocean to escape, whatever. So it's not like you'd think, Hollywood blockbuster, like you don't need the people, but it was in the Roy Thomas Hall, it was packed. And then afterwards, everybody's asking questions and really into it and stuff. So yeah, it's really nice to see that kind of thing. People aren't just coming like, I want to, people come out to see the stars. Oh my God, it's Harry Styles or whatever. But yeah, they enjoy all these different think pieces. So that is unique, I guess.
Tips of your past has that delta I was referring to before, seeing as you've only seen Hold Your Breath. Yeah. In terms of TIFF's past, and now knowing what you know, considering since then Oscar awards have happened since those TIFFs, are there any films that you were shocked by their tale? You saw it here and you were like, I don't know if that's going to do so well, or I thought that's going to do amazing, and then they didn't, or they didn't, or they did.
I don't think so, because I haven't seen much. Like I always feel, because my problem with film festivals, I feel like I just love the energy and I want to meet people, and like just like somebody like you. If I was sitting in a movie right now, I wouldn't have met you.
Sure.
So I always tell myself I can go watch the movie later.
Totally.
Like I got a media pass for Sundance 2 years ago, and I didn't see a single movie because I'm like, I need to be meeting people. So that's kind of why I go, because I love people. But yeah, like one year I randomly got a ticket from work, and I'm like, what is this? It's about wine or something. It was Sideways. Is that the one that wound up winning the Oscar with Paul Giamatti or something? He's like, I'm not drinking Merlot. It was about sort of romantic comedy and whatever, and it was amazing. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea what this was going to be, but I think it did either maybe best screenplays. Like it was big at the Oscars. So yeah, sometimes I'm just like, had no idea, and then it becomes a big thing. So. Yeah, it's all been good. I don't remember what your question was anymore.
No,
was I shocked that something didn't do well or not? Yeah, I mean, it sometimes the People's Choice doesn't win the Oscar, but it's usually pretty close, and the things that the audiences like are good. And then I'll see something, or I'll have interviewed the people, and then months later it sort of comes out in the theaters, and everybody's talking about it, and it's like, oh right, of course, that was a big thing at TIFF. So it is a good bellwether. And it's not like Cannes where people are just going, so they, maybe they just want to be on a yacht and spot like celebrities on the beach. Like this is, people come here for a reason. And even people who are still here now, like you, because the first 4 days it's closed off on the streets and it's more like a festival. But after that, there's still another week. And so the people who are still here are serious about it, because they want to see the movies, they want to meet people. It's not just the party time anymore.
The industry conference is over.
Yeah.
The industry is headed back home.
Yeah, and at Sundance it was the same schedule. Like by the end of the first weekend, they were like, it's not really much happening. So, a few people are. But what I liked about that was I could interview people. Like if I'm on the red carpet, they had a retrospective. They had like Coda, the movie about deaf people.
Yes.
The whole cast was there, and there was only a few of us there to interview them. So I got to spend time with all of them. And sometimes at Sundance, I was literally the only one interviewing them. So I was like, I feel nice to be here, because otherwise they wouldn't get to tell their stories.
100%.
So it's really cozy, that kind of stuff. This is a bit bigger. It's not as cozy, but it's still very exciting. I was saying I've got a British friend. I've seen him come here every year for 10 years, and he's you know, he thinks it's worth it. He's just hoping to get enough footage to make it worth it because he makes money from his YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, for
but,
sure.
yeah.
I'm having the same situation, but also this is kind of my scouting mission.
Yeah.
It's my first international festival. I've usually just covered festivals in London because the BFI is across the river from me.
Yeah.
And so this is my first international festival, and I think it is the best place to start because I hear Sundance can be quite grueling.
Yeah,
but
it's
TIFF
very cold.
Yeah, indeed. And also, but TIFF, though Toronto can get cold, I have heard.
Yeah, but not. Fortunately, it'll probably get cold next week, so
Yes.
you're just getting the tail end of
Just
summer.
at the end.
But also, yeah, it's a lot of running around like through this little town on your buses, and it's also it feels like it's Sundance is smaller films, like a lot of sort of very like.
It's the
there's a few big
beginning
people,
of people's paths.
but it's not the big blockbusters. It's more smaller things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
One
it's
final
difficult.
question
Yeah.
before I leave you because I have to rush off
Yep.
to Vice is Broke, which is
Okay.
the documentary about Vice being broke. Any word on the ground? I know you now because you've been talking to people. Any word on the ground of what looks like to be the people's choice this year?
Yeah, so
I
what-
heard one thing about Saturday night from one person.
That's what I heard. So
Oh, brilliant, good.
I was walking down the street here and I saw this couple that used to live in my building with me and one of my neighbors, and I was like, hey, Greg and Donna.
Wow.
And then Donna's like, yeah, Greg, he'll tell you what's gonna win People's Choice in the Oscar. He's like Saturday night, and I'm like, all right, sounds good. And there's a giant poster of it,
If
so that's
you
the
can
buzz.
Get your hands on it. And are you a fan of SNL?
Yes, I've taken the Second City classes here.
If
It was
you-
always my dream to be in Saturday Night
You are going to, then it's the film for you.
Ugh.
You are going to love it. It is for the people who love Saturday Night Live, and it's like for the comedy nerds. It's so good, very well paced, and the person playing Lorne Michaels, Gabriel something,
Yeah.
absolutely aces it. I've been dunking on Lorne Michaels since I was born. No, I've been dunking on Lorne Michaels for a very long time.
Oh, man.
Which, all due respect, because I absolutely adore Saturday Night Live. I have my respect for the man, but I dunk on him because I'm a young generation and we are irreverent, right?
All right.
But watching this movie, I got a new appreciation for what he did with this show and how he set the thing up and what a risk it was. And the fact that it's still on the air
Yes.
now is a miracle
unbelievable.
of television.
I had a meltdown when I turned I think it was 36 or 37, 15 years ago. Why am I not on Saturday Night Live yet? I was like, this was my goal. Why didn't I go on audition and just be there? And then I Googled that. Who's the woman that was in? I was gonna say Ghostbusters and stuff. The black woman.
Leslie Jones.
Yeah. And I Googled, she didn't get on until she was 47. So I was like, oh, that gives me
It
hope.
can still happen.
It hasn't happened.
It can still happen.
But it could still. Maybe I could top her record. Yeah, why not? And I'm like, you know what? I took Second City class 30 years ago. I haven't done improv since. I'm like, am I too old? No, I can go out and be funny and do my thing.
We are living in a brand new age.
Yes.
If you can just get that moment on TikTok, that moment on YouTube.
Yes, I blew up.
That's all it takes.
Last year, I was trying to get to 1,000 followers on TikTok. I was dancing. I'm doing all my stuff. And just one morning, I was like, wait, this video's taken off. 2.4 million views.
Wow.
For just me talking about strawberry frappuccino.
That's how it happens.
1,600 comments. You're my new favorite creator. You're so funny.
That's how it happens.
I didn't know grown-ups could be funny. You remind me of my dad. Whatever.
Oh,
No, I was like, I'll take it, please. They're like, I was crying and you made me happy. I wish I could tell stories like
TikTok's
you do.
amazing, isn't it?
I felt like I've seen, because when I was 20, I was hosting community cable shows. So I was doing fun, and people had to call in, and
Oh wow. So
sometimes.
you're very on the fly.
Yeah, they'd leave voicemails on the machine like, hey, I loved your show, and I was doing drawings, and people would say, can you just do a drawing of me? I'm calling for a drawing, not to play the game show or whatever.
Aw.
And people my age would find me at the subway station. I figured out by what you were saying where you lived and stuff. But now I can go on TikTok from my phone and I can reach that, young people and old people, just everybody again. Because there were doctors who called the show, my wife and I never watch community cable, but we love watching this guy on the show. And so I'm like, I feel like
TikTok's
it's
the new community cable.
exactly. And
Yeah.
2.4 million, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
that have
and
seen.
it's a lot of real people. It's,
Yeah.
You see it in the comments. It's
Yeah.
actually hitting.
There's 530,000 likes, 1,700 comments. Those are people that
For real.
wanted to say, I like your thing.
And
So
have you not also noticed that with TikTok, it's when you turn up it's when you turn up
yes,
not expecting.
exactly. That's why I couldn't even what is that? I didn't remember posting. It was just me telling the story about how the woman made me a pup cup with extra whipped cream, and everybody's like, tell me they did not give you a Trenta, because that's supposed to be for the iced teas or something
Wow.
it was not the ones where I'm going to do a duet with Howie Mandel or
Right.
whatever. It was just me being honest, and now I'm like, can I reproduce that? Because now I'll be overthinking it. How do I sound happy again?
It's the people that are making TikToks on their commute, the people that are making TikToks
Yes.
from place to place.
Well, that's the thing. You can do
An
anything.
idea, you
yeah.
do it, you go. I cannot wait for everybody to be like, oh, you did an interview with this guy?
Yes.
He's huge now. How did you find
You got
him?
the first interview with Spark the Genius,
Yeah,
exactly.
So is it at Spark the Genius on TikTok?
Yes, it's everything.
Fantastic.
I came up with that name a couple of years ago.
Spark the Genius.
I made sure I could get it for all social handles, and
Well, I look forward to being able to say that you said that you had a dream to be on SNL on our podcast, and then you're one of the main principal cast.
Exactly. Even here's my Spark the Genius merch, right?
Oh, amazing.
I'm gonna do a more of a happy face version, like with a spark on the face, with a little smile, a little more personality.
Like a David Bowie smiley.
Exactly. That's
Love
exactly what I'm picturing. And then maybe I want to do makeup on my face, kind of like it. It'll be like this with a little spark, and the spark kind of looks like an S.
Love
I'm
it.
so happy about that. So I'll do that, and then you can say, "Oh my God, you got Spark the Genius before he was."
Before he was big.
Yes.
How cool is that?
I'm very excited.
Thank you so much for being on Sophisticulture.
You're welcome. Enjoy your
the rest
movie.
Of your festival,
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, and thanks for reminding people you can follow Spark the Genius everywhere.
And you can follow us at OBSCURAE on TikTok and also UMNIA on TikTok.
All right, I'll have to put this in the descriptions because who knows how to spell either of those things.
I know, it's true. It's true. We've made our lives very difficult.
Exactly.
All our words are weird.
All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thoughts on The Life of Chuck, which I just saw.
I really enjoyed it. I think people have expectations because it's Stephen King, and I think it kind of surprises. I think, like Shawshank, there's an optimism which is often buried under Stephen King's more sort of, terrifying stuff.
Right.
So it was nice. I like Tom Hiddleston. He is a sensational dancer, and the film took maximum advantage of that. My name is Russ Nelson from London.
And you've got social media, I assume. Where can people follow you?
Oh, I don't actually. I'm one of those. No, I live in a cave underground. I just come out every now and again to do thousands of interviews.
You are here to interview for which publication?
Red Carpet News.
Red Carpet News, brilliant, fantastic. So we'll keep an eye out for you. So what I seem to love about it is that I didn't know that it was based on a Stephen King novella.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. What I knew was that Tom Hiddleston was in it, and it was the guy that had made tons of scary movies, but that all my scary movie friends absolutely adored Mike Flanagan, and that I was never going to be able to watch a movie of his, and then he's made this, and I'm like, yes! And I see it now. Those monologues and those character pieces, and it was brilliant, but it was also rather short, because I didn't know it was based on a novella, so I was expecting something that was going to be a bit longer, and I felt that it just was a very sensible length.
You know what? I think it's one of those films that's deceptive. I think because it has a free act structure, which allows them to play with time, but it breaks down the film into 3 separate sections. I mean, literally on screen, it has the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And I think sometimes the film runtime, I think, is like 111 minutes. It's not a short film. It really is. It really is. But I think because each individual section is tonally, sort of chronologically different, it feels like you're watching episode. It's like binge watching on Netflix. You don't notice that you've just watched 8 hours. No, it's 111 minutes. I think IMDb, keep me honest. No, I think 111 minutes. Because I was juggling other screenings, so I had to check. So no, it's not a short one. But I think because of the way the film breaks itself down, it is more digestible, and you don't notice the passage of time. Because it's like watching 3 separate films in a row, but just half an hour ones.
Yeah. Did you read the novella beforehand? Did you know of it?
I hadn't read the novella beforehand. As soon as I learn to read, I'll get on that. No, it's fine.
Audiobooks.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure there's someone, I'm sure they've got Vin Diesel or someone reading it. Yeah, it's great.
I'm a baseball friend.
But no, I'll be honest though. I think in a way, not having pre-read the book was better. I can't judge because obviously I've only had my experience, but I think it was maybe better because I think one of the big mysteries is the questions that the first act asks. And I think if you already knew the answers, I think it would be like cheating. It would be like doing a test where you've already seen the result. I think the journey is very much part of the experience. So I think while people who've read and enjoyed the novella might enjoy the film, I actually think for people who haven't, the mystery side of it and the full circle layering of the journey is probably more enjoyable to people who haven't read it. So if you haven't read it, don't read it. Read it afterwards.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. Actually, if you've read it, the whole first act is going to be a slog because it's all based on the premise that you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
You don't know what's happening. Anyway, absolutely. sweet, fantastic film. We are here for strong opinions, strong film opinions at OBSCURAE.
Sure.
So, outside of the festival, because you've only seen one film, anything in like the last 6 months that you really loved, really hated, or expected to love and hated, or expected to hate and loved it?
Oh. I'm going to try and think. I'll think for a second. I'll also think about what I can say without getting, blacklisted from future red carpet.
So
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
People have had that concern as we've been going around. We're going strong film opinions. They go, "Well, I'm a producer. If I say something bad, let me say the good stuff." And I was like, "Okay, 100%."
Okay.
Seem to have that
What have I seen lately? I like Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought that it did. Well, I think that judged by its own merits.
Right.
It was the ideal use of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. That was the perfect combination of those. I enjoyed the cameos. I thought they did well to keep some of the big ones a surprise.
I still have not seen it.
Okay, well, I won't. No spoilers. What else have I seen? I was disappointed with Trap.
Really?
Well, I think a lot of people were. I still also.
M. Night Shyamalan, the one that's in the big arena, and it's kind of a
the basic premise is it is a guy who's with his daughter at a concert, and you very early on, and this is revealed in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler, but you find out that he is basically a serial killer of some sort, and the police have set up this whole concert as some sort of elaborate trap because they knew he was going to be there. So there's hundreds of police officers, and it's how does he get out? And it's a very interesting question, and it sets up quite a good, and it's sort of in real time, and at the beginning at least, and I think that, promises to be very exciting. Unfortunately, I think after the first 20-30 minutes, it very quickly reaches a point where it either has to choose to be ridiculous or just run out of normal things to happen.
Which path does it choose?
I think the poor box office performance and lack of talk about a sequel can give you a guess. The irony is, I think the thing is, you watch films like that sometimes, and I don't have a problem believing that Josh Hartnett is a handsome family man serial killer. That I believe. What I don't believe is that people go to a concert and that during the concert, half of the audience are still in like the concourse bit, just walking around, chatting and buying t-shirts. Just like... No. The film, because of its plot mechanics, needs that to be the case. It needs it to be okay for Josh Hartnett to every 5 minutes, like, I'm going to do this, and to have like loads of people there and everything, and to have it. But realistically, no one who has ever been to a concert, people who pay £1,500 to sit 5 miles away from Taylor Swift, they don't leave that seat until a week after the concert in case she comes back. They rent that place for a year. That's how much. So the idea, I think the irony is that things like people being serial killers and it's, crazy things happening, you can suspend disbelief for that. What I can't do is for 60 minutes of a film, suspend disbelief that everyone at a concert just walks around and like goes shopping for t-shirts in the middle of the show when the headline act is on.
Okay, here's what I don't understand. Why couldn't they have just had it be the before? Like, we all get, kept waiting for...
Because as part of the increasingly convoluted plot mechanics, as a necessity to set up an ever-escalating series of how's he going to get out of this one? What's he going to do now? What's he going to do now? They need the concert to at some point start and keep going because that becomes part of the narrative. So I think it's just.
This is aging island all over again.
I think the problem is, and I mean, I'm not sure, he's obviously he's made some great films, and he's seemingly very good at that initial idea. He's good at the elevator pitch. That's why he keeps getting funding. What if this guy? But really, he's dead. What if it? He's very good at saying to a studio the one line that looks good on a poster, and they think great. I think realistically, if you look at his recent track record, box office wise, the problem is that often his films, unless I think especially as well, the irony is with Trap, he's trying to move away from that cliche of everyone sort of sitting there, what's going to be the big twist? What's going to be the big twist? He's trying to move away from that and make it more of a series of, smaller twists and like more of a conventional thriller rather than and it turned out at the end that everyone was living in the 17th century and it was all a dream that a dog was having. It's not that. It's
This interview is full of spoilers.
There is no dog in Trap. No, there is no dog. Maybe it would have been better. That would have improved it, but no, there's no dog. But no, I found that was quite disappointing. But the cinema I saw it in had a very comfortable reclining chair, so it was good and bad. You take the yin and the yang.
Well, thank you so much, Russell. That was amazing. Before I leave, Spark the Genius over here. Have
Yes.
you seen anything since I last saw you?
Since last night,
Yeah.
no. I've just
No?
had a
You've just been
breakfast, so I've
chilling.
got no more movies to report.
Well, let us know if you do have any more movies to report. I'll tell you The Life of Chuck was fantastic, so awesome. Thank you. Indeed, that was Sophisticulture, a podcast by OBSCURAE Productions. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider buying us a coffee. Your support helps us continue bringing you our coverage and episodes, including the podcast, our articles, and our TikToks. The link is in the podcast description. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.